We're back in an episode of BikeWalk Provo Chats. I am your host, Austin Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of BikeWalk Provo. And today we have two of Provo City's engineers with us from the transportation group. We have Rob Hunter and Jared Lillywhite. We're going to ask them a bunch of questions about things that they've worked on, why they love what they do, why they're engineers, and hear some of their life experiences as well. My first question for you guys, so that our listeners can get to know you better. So Rob and Jared, can you guys tell us about yourselves? It'll take like 2 minutes, give us a bit of your background, like where you've lived before, education, work history, that kind of stuff.
I grew up most of my life in Las Vegas. We lived close by here until second grade in Springville and then Spanish Fork. But grew up most of my time in Las Vegas. That's where I did my schooling at UNLV. So I've got a bachelor's and master's in civil engineering. That's where I met my wife when we got married. After, I guess, a couple of years into the recession in 2011, Vegas wasn't doing so well. So we moved down to San Antonio just for a good job and a new experience. We lived there for 6.5 years and absolutely loved it. And then we moved here 4 years ago. So I was the principal stormwater engineer until about August, and became the traffic engineer in August. So I've got 5 kids, and we love it here in Provo.
I'm Jared. I grew up in Layton, Utah, my whole life. Came to Provo in 2015 after my mission, which was in Arizona. So I've been right here in basically the same time zone my whole life. Came to BYU for school, studied civil engineering, just graduated at the very end of 2019. And my wife and I decided to buy our first home here in Provo. And we have our little 2-year-old son, Benson. And nice. That's us. Yeah.
What neighborhood did you guys get your home in?
It's a townhouse. It's in the Grandview North neighborhood.
Awesome. And then Rob, you're in West Provo, right?
Yeah, Sunset neighborhood.
Awesome.
Yep.
Cool. And for the listeners who haven't met these two before, Rob and Jared, they have been exceptional engineers for the city and super responsive, I would say. Like when residents have concerns or when we have something that we see that could be improved, they listen, they respond, they act quickly. And in our opinion, in BikeWalk Provo's opinion, they've really changed the focus of the engineering department, which was like mostly car centric. And now it's a department that seems to focus on all street users. And these guys have been really great at working like that. So question for you guys, why did you choose engineering? And why specifically transportation? What interests you in this field?
Civil engineering runs in my family. I've got an uncle that teaches civil engineering at BYU. I believe he's the one that got my dad interested in civil engineering. So my dad has a bachelor's and master's in civil from BYU, and he's the one that got me interested in civil engineering. So, and in terms of transportation, I've actually done a variety of things. Like I said, I used to be the principal stormwater engineer. So my career, which I started, I guess, as an intern in engineering in 2003, so 18 years in civil engineering. But I've done a variety of things. Traffic is a good way. Everybody deals with traffic, right? In terms of everything, there's utilities and stuff that affects everybody too. But traffic is something that we each deal with every day in our lives, no matter what type of use we use. And so it's a good place to have an impact and do something that I feel is important.
For me, freshman year, like most people, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Cycled through different majors, took a career exploration class, and they had us do an activity where we had to rate our values, our career values, what's important to us and what's not. And I don't know, that class just helped me realize that I wanted something stable and I also wanted something that contributed to society in some way. And I also knew that I was best at math classes. So I went into engineering I was just interested looking around me at like, how did we get all this? Like, where did it come from? How do we get water in our pipes? How do how do the streets look the way they do? How do bridges stay up? Just wanted to learn, honestly, how we got to where we're at. The first time I really thought I'd be a transportation engineer was when I went to an ITE student Institute of Transportation Engineers student chapter meeting, and I only went because if you signed up, you got free dinner. And I went. They served zupas. It was delicious.
That's how they
But
get you.
the presenter was actually very interesting. They were talking about a traffic impact study that they were doing on some new developments, and I just never really considered that that was part of the development process, and kind of went from there. So
Awesome. Yeah, as an outsider, as a non-engineer, it surely seems like, first, like you said, Jared, there are a ton of engineering jobs in so many different fields. It's like you'll never lack for work.
yeah.
And then also you have a huge impact on people's lives because you are helping design the built environment.
Yeah.
And it seems like, especially in the United States, engineers have principal design authority over streets too, which people spend a lot of their time traveling around. And so you have an impact on people's daily lives. I love that. I've seen both you guys riding your bikes around town. Rob, I've seen you a ton of times. You're just like riding to and from places. So my question for you is, like, as you've cycled around Provo, what have you learned? What has cycling around Provo taught you?
Well, so the last two places I lived were, pretty big and busy cities. And so when I started, what I really liked is I felt a lot safer on Provo city roads than I had ever felt before. That's one of the big impacts, and I like to see that other people are around. It helps. Not only that it's students that are walking or biking, but especially with that population, it's nice to see a lot of other people on the road. It feels more of an interaction than driving on a freeway to work every day. So that's part of it. And then the other thing too, and especially as we've gone on rides with you guys and stuff, there's little things that you learn pretty quickly. This little thing would help a lot in making it an easier experience for somebody who's out on the road. So sometimes you kind of look at the big picture, and I've got the striping and I've got the symbols and I've got the everything, and it seems like you got everything covered, and then you get out there and you're like, oh, that this additional sign could make a big difference to somebody who's actually trying to get from one place, onto another street. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd say for me, biking and walking has helped me just to appreciate Provo. When I moved here, my wife and I, we both grew up in Davis County, and we always just said, as soon as we graduate, we're going to move back home. That's just where we grew up. It's where home is. And we just didn't, we always said, we don't really like Provo, Utah County. It's not really our thing. And then I don't know what it was, but both of us just turned to each other when they were like, I really like this city. And I think it's just that when you walk around it and you bike around it, you just see a lot more of the city. Some of the hidden gems, even if it's just the cool little tree house that somebody's built, or the Provo River Trail is beautiful. And I don't know, just there's a lot of hidden gems that you can kind of fall in love with, even if you don't know who they're associated with, that I've enjoyed seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Both you guys are talking about quality of life. Like, walking and biking increases your quality of life. You get to see things better, experience the city in a closer, more intimate way, get to know people. That's one of the things that we talk about all the time with BikeWalk Provo. Is it's hard to build community when people are trapped behind a ton of glass and steel. If someone's walking past their neighbor's house and they're on the porch, it's easy to start a conversation. But if they're driving past, it's near impossible. People don't stop and talk as much as they do when they're walking and biking. So I'm really glad that you've experienced that. As we've worked together on different projects, Rob, you've said a number of times that, well, both you guys have like maxed out the paint and sign budget, doing those small things that make biking and walking better. So given that the US Census says that 18% of work trips are made by walking and biking in Provo, and we've made the pitch before to the city council, and other elected officials that, Provo should be spending closer to 18% of its money on active transportation projects. If you had a bigger budget to spend on these kind of projects, maybe even unlimited money, what kind of things would you do with it? What kind of projects would you work on?
There's a lot of things, if budget wasn't an issue, there's there's a lot of things. I mean, that's one of the things that Provo, I've lived a few places, and Provo is a really good place, but there's always things that can be better about it. Some of the places, I live in the Southwest area. We have a lot of locations that don't have sidewalk, right? It had been in more of a rural area. As it's built out, development is required to build stuff that directly fronts them. But sometimes, that's in the middle of where the kind of half-mile blocks are, and so you may get stuff there in the middle, but then stuff on the outside is left, and it's hard to fit everything that's going on with the development. Provo and Utah County are growing like crazy. It's hard to take that limited budget and do everything that we'd like to do. But one of the big things for me would be completing the street with the street trees, with the sidewalk, making it a safer feel for people that are trying to get around in any kind of walking, biking, whatever they're doing. And it's not just the Southwest area of Provo. There's locations throughout Provo that, like I said, as it's built out over however old Provo is, 150 years, there's some things that have smaller areas that have been left that we're trying to get around to them all, but budget only goes so far every year. So
yeah,
I think sidewalks is big that Rob brought up. I also think if we had unlimited funds, I think there are many improvements to intersections that could be made at almost every intersection in terms of making them fully protected for people biking or scootering or walking, or bulb outs in lots of places could improve. We've been able to stripe some bike lanes this year and have some more that are planning to be striped. But if we had unlimited funds, we'd love to build a full-on separated trail or path or more protected lanes. Unlimited funds would be great. But obviously the more money we have, our funds come from taxes, and so there's always a trade-off. But
there's always a limit. Yep. So even though both of you have been here for a short amount of time, less than a year, and you have limited budget, you've been able to accomplish some really nice things for the people of Provo. And so I asked you to think about one of your projects that you're most proud of that you've done in Provo. And so can you guys share your screen? Let's see, Rob, you want to go first and share your screen and show me the project you're most proud on that you worked on.
We just finished up a few weeks ago, which had been started a couple of years ago with our kind of predecessors. Is the 200 East neighborhood bikeway is my preferred terminology for the taking a long street and putting in sharrows. So some of it had already been done. Some of them were hard improvements. We didn't have the budget to with these bulb outs. In the 200 North intersection, there's a traffic circle, but we put in these bulb outs to try to slow down traffic in a lot of locations. Put in the signing and the striping. We didn't have the budget to go and do additional improvements in terms of intersection improvements yet through it. We'll have to figure that out in future years, but that was one of those where we took a chunk of our striping and sign budget, and at least put in the rest of that, the rest of the sharrows, the rest of the signs. And so we've got now a complete, it's signed and striped for the bikeway all the way from 800 North down to 600 South. So it should be one of our main things as we build a pedestrian bridge in the next couple of years over the railroad. Should be a main way to get from the transit station all the way up to BYU campus, and then really connecting that in. One that we just did our portion, I think just this last week, and BYU is going to do their portion, is having it connect over. There's bike lanes here on 800 North, and then we just put in sharrows on 150 East. So it's something to just complete without being able to do the the 100%, all done. It's at least getting the basic infrastructure in to get people all the way from the transit center all the way up into BYU campus.
I know so many people that love that route. 2 years ago, BikeWalk Provo led a biking and walking count, and we counted at 2 points on that street on 200 East. And at its peak, at its highest area of use, which was the 200 East, 800 North intersection, we estimated 1.6 million pedestrian crossings per year on that. And there are so many design features on that that's made it safer to walk on. Like the signalized intersection at 5th North is awesome because that's a higher traffic road, can be hard to cross. And then the bulb outs are great at shortening the crossing distance.
Yeah, and then we've got the two crossings of the 700 North and at 300 North too, making those specific for pedestrian and bikes too. It'll be a great corridor.
Yeah, cool. Jared.
So since I just started in November, I don't have a lot of pictures because things aren't really built because I get built over the summer. But I think one of the things I have enjoyed working on the most, or the most proud of, is working on the Safe Routes to School initiative. And it's funny because most of the things that we have recommended for improvement and are going to be put in this summer are very small, very simple things like an additional striped crosswalk or another sign, or in a couple places I would go out to count a crossing and I notice, hey, this one is marked as a school crossing, but there's not a pedestrian ramp there. And so we're just going to put in a curb cut and an accessible ramp for all users to be able to walk just a little bit easier to school. And what I enjoyed about that process is every school council that we talked to was just, they were so engaged in that, right? It meant so much to them, and they were so happy to have somebody to work with. And so it was rewarding to just simple things could make a big difference for people. It's probably the one I've been most excited about.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you guys in the last minute or so we've got. And that is, I work for a city now, and so I know how hard it can be to get stuff done. Sometimes like red tape, there's a lot of hurdles you have to go through. And so it's not easy accomplishing things like you guys have done. So I want you to tell me like one really quickly, like what's the hardest part of your job, but also like what's the most rewarding part of your job?
Well, hardest part of my job, I would say, is for every time somebody says thank you, there's also somebody who is yelling. that's really what it boils down to.
Yeah.
And it makes it tough. That it just feels like no matter what the decision, or we do what we think is right, and we're always going to do that. But there's plenty of people who don't agree. So it's difficult to not have a consensus.
It's like everybody in the city is your customer, and you can't ever please everybody.
Yep, that's what it is. But the best part of the job, to be honest with you, I mean, my favorite part of the job is the people that we work with, because we have been able to, even where we have different disagreements, even when we can't, we don't have 100% agreement on what we're doing. There's a lot of collaboration, and that's why we've been able to get done what we've been able to get done in the time frame that we have, is because, like I said, even if we don't agree, we move forward, when we come to the compromise and we move forward with it, and we implement it. So so if none of us get exactly what we want, at least we're moving forward and we get some of what we want instead of nothing. Right? So yeah. It's been good. It's been great.
Cool. Yeah, it's a huge balancing act.
For me, I'm just starting out this job and my career in engineering. So for me, the hardest thing's probably just been learning all the different things that go into building a city. We don't just work on roads, we work on development review and all these other things. And I'm just trying to learn how that process works, and, what do I need to check for approving a development, and how traffic signals operate and how the wires are connected. There's just a lot to learn.
Yeah.
and I don't luckily have to deal with all the yelling Rob has to deal with. I've had my fair share, but the most rewarding thing is just when something that we work on does get built and you can just see it and you can use it. And like my first job right out of college, I worked on a lot of projects in Texas that I'm literally never going to see. And this job, you know, we worked on 300 West, making some minor improvements to the trail behind the rec center and striping in some bike lanes and some sharrows. And I ride on that to get home. And so it's just really rewarding to see, well, I'm benefiting it. I'm sure other people are too, you know? And so that's been a good part about this job.
Awesome. Well, everyone at BikeWalk Provo is thrilled to work so closely with you guys. You're doing a fantastic job, and we hope that the residents of Provo know that. So thanks for joining us today, and we'll keep working together.